Hey there. Alright, so today I'm going to be working in Tableau, so I'm going to go ahead and load the application here. And once we're in Tableau, we'll need to import our data set, and you'll be able to do that over here to the left with these different types of files. In my case, my data set was saved as an Excel file, so I'm going to go ahead and click Excel. And then I'm just going to locate my data set, which is Tableau data set for this example, which is just a data set that I created. Once I select that, I'm going to go ahead and click Open. And we see that our data source gets brought into Tableau, and there we see we have our variables of our data set and their corresponding observations. And for this particular video, we're going to be plotting a scatter plot. But before we do that, we need to make sure that all our variables are coded the way that we want them to be coded. In this case, I want gender, job type, and ethnicity to be coded in terms of their labels because they're demographic variables. So we're going to go ahead and make that change. To do that, we're going to click the pound sign here, or the hashtag, that number sign, and then we're going to click on string, and then we're going to click this drop down arrow here and click aliases so that we can rename these values to their corresponding label. In this case, 1 is male and 2 is female, and we're going to click OK. And then we're just going to follow those same steps for our two other categorical demographic variables. And we're going to click string, click the drop down menu again for aliases, and then we're going to change those. In this case, 1 is going to be corresponding to food, 2 is going to be electronics, and 3 is going to be retail. And we're going to click OK. And our ethnicity variable here, 1 is going to be black, 2 is going to be white, and 3 is going to be Hispanic, and 4 is going to be Asian, and we're going to click OK. Alright, so a little bit about this data set. This data set is looking at performance in sales dollars and corresponding job satisfaction. So in this case, we're looking at the type of goods sold and their performance, the employee's performance. Over here, these are participants, their performance, and whether or not they have, whether or not performance predicts their levels of job satisfaction. And so to do that, we're going to be graphing a scatter plot. But instead of just graphing these raw variables here, we want to plot the points in the form of z-scores. To calculate those z-scores, we're going to go to each of our predictor and our outcome variable here, and we're going to click the drop down arrow and click create calculated field, and then we're just going to rename our variable here for our z-score for performance. So it's probably just going to be z-score perf for performance. And I just copied and pasted a variable I found. Oh, we see that, oops, gotta make sure that all our variables are spelled correctly, so I'm just gonna make that change there. And then I'm gonna go back into our create calculated field text window here. All right, so now we're back where we were. And I'm just going to throw that in. Here's our formula for our z-score. This is a newer formula that I was able to find. But here we see we have our, in this case, we have our fixed predictor variable and our summed outcome variable minus our fixed average, the fixed average of the fixed performance variable. And then we have the sum of our job satisfaction variable. And then we have which is all divided by, using this / here, by the fixed standard deviation of the fixed performance variable and the sum of the job satisfaction variable. Once we've got that, we're going to go ahead and click OK. And then we're going to do the same thing for our job satisfaction variable here. Click create calculated field and rename our variable here z-score job sat. All right, and then we're just going to populate that formula again, but this time we'll need to change our variables a bit. This time the fixed variable is going to be job satisfaction, so we're going to make those changes here. Alright, and once we made those changes, we're going to click OK. And now that we see we have our new variables here, but instead of actual values, we have this null value here. And what that basically means is if we click this or hover over this icon here, we see that this field contains an aggregate calculation which only contains meaningful data in the visualization level of detail. And so what that means is in order for Tableau to really make sense of these variables, we have to first plot them in our plotting window here. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and rename this to scatter plot 1. There we go. But all right, so this is going to be our plotting window, and I'm going to go ahead and throw in our z-score predictor value, which is a z-score performance, in our columns row here. And then I'm going to go and throw in our job satisfaction outcome variable in the rows row here. But we see that they're being displayed as sum, and we don't want that, so we're going to click the drop down arrow and click dimension. And the same with our z-score for job satisfaction, we're going to click dimension again. All right, so we see that our points have been plotted. So then let's start throwing in some variables here. The first variable I'm going to add is gender variable in color, and we see that color indicator shows up over here. But I don't want a count, I want a dimension. So we see that once I make that change using the drop down arrow here, clicking dimension, that our values are represented by color. In this case we have females are blue and males are orange. And the next variable I'm going to throw in is our ethnicity variable into shape. That way we can kind of see what each of our ethnicities are. And again, we're going to change that because we don't want a count, we want a dimension. And it breaks our ethnicity variable down into their corresponding categories. In this case, We have Asians, blacks, Hispanics, and white, represented by their corresponding symbols there. And lastly, I want to throw in our age variable here into the size box. But it's displaying our ages as a sum. That's not what we want, so I'm going to go ahead and change that using the drop-down arrow to discrete. And we see that the ages are represented by our size, but that's still in sum, so we're going to make that a dimension variable. There we go. Now we're ready to go. And so once we've done that, the next thing we need to do is determine our different categories. So to do that, I'm going to bring our job type variable to the columns row. And again, we don't want counts, so I'm going to display that as an attribute so that it plots each of our data points in the appropriate column, just like so. And then I'm going to throw in a couple of trend lines here. So I'm going to click Analytics, and I'm going to go to Trend Line and click or hover over Linear here. And we see that our trend lines are plotted. But okay, so what's this do? All right, when I hover over a symbol, we see that some information about the data point comes up. But let's go ahead and change that so we can make it a more cohesive sentence. All right, so first thing we want to do with that is go back over to our data, and we want to input our actual raw scores so that we can refer to them in our tooltip box here. And again, we're going to pull in our job satisfaction value here. All right, so let's go back into our tooltip window here. And I'm going to go ahead and insert those new values, which are performance and job satisfaction. All right. So let's go ahead and move these to the bottom. Make that like so. All right. So let's start typing our sentence. All right. So what do we want our sentence to say? Let's throw in our ethnicity variable here. And our gender variable. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of these two. And these are employees and job type. And we're talking about sales. We don't want our z-score variables in this case, so we've already got our raw scores. So we're just going to get rid of these here. And let's see, as a performance or of Put our performance value here. Alright, so now let's just do some cleaning to make it a little more easy to read. So we're going to take bold off. Have some of these words here in our sentence. Alright, let's hit OK and see what that looks like. Alright, so when we hover over our data point, again this time we see that we have a 56-year-old, gotta edit. There should be gender, not two ethnicities. So we're gonna insert here again, gender. Make sure it's in the right place. There we go. Click OK. Let's try that again. Oh, but our highlighting's off. So let's re-highlight our key variables here and make it a little more easy to read. There we go. All right, third time's a charm, right? Okay, so this time we have, we have a 56-year-old white male employee in electronics sales who has a performance score of 8,935 and a satisfaction score of 90. All right, so this is a scatter plot that we want. In this case, we've plotted z-scores, and we see that these two trend lines are in a positive direction with these two columns. And for our males over here in our electronics column, and what that's telling us is that as our employees here perform more, in which case they sell more products, whether it be food, electronics, or retail products, as they sell more, the greater their satisfaction. Except for, I'm not sure what's going on with our females in our electronics category here, but that's what we got. That's just a data set that I created extemporaneously. So there's our plot. And in this case, we're using z-scores. And these scores, we see that are we have some pretty good r-squared values, as an r-squared being the best fit for these data points, meaning that the points are fairly close to the line overall, except for, yeah, that looks pretty good overall. Not bad for just a randomly generated data set. Well, all right. That's how we create a scatter plot in Tableau. Thanks for tuning in. Cheers.